Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is our fourth major webinar, and it's been a pleasure to grow with many real estate professionals, from the real estate agents, builders, developers, investors, and community members. Today, we're going to be talking about the 3 steps for a homeowner feasibility study. As a trial through Christmas, from the end of December to the early January, we ran a paid ads campaign and had over 60 homeowners request a feasibility study in the Burnaby marketplace. More and more, we have homeowners reaching out to us looking to see what the development potential is for their property, with 3 main questions in mind. What is the development profit for small-scale multi-unit housing? What is the equity required to develop a project? And what are the project timelines? Today, we'll go through the foundational knowledge for you to learn about your properties and share this information within your network. Before we get started, we have a city-by-city cheat sheet for you that you can download. This city-by-city cheat sheet was about 6 weeks of sweat, blood, and tears going through every city's zoning bylaw, speaking to the planning departments and the city managers to determine what is the potential for each city with the new zoning allowing for 4 to 6 units. The QR code is on the right. There is also a download link that is shared into the chat box. Please take a moment, save this for your files, and reference this as you move through each city and share the information with anyone who is curious. The main categories of this cheat sheet is whether a development permit is required for small-scale multi-unit housing. A development permit governs the form and character of the development and is typically approved before you move on to building permit. The entitlement, whether you can sell each 4 to 6 unit individually, or if you have to hold them as one rental building, as White Rock prescribes, or alternatively, duplexes with basement suites and garden cottages to get to the 4 to 6 units. The floor space ratio is another critical feature of the zoning bylaws, dictating how large each unit can be in the development. If you have any questions about this cheat sheet, we do have Q&A at the end, and feel free to put those questions into the chat box. Where are we now? In December of 2023, the provincial government announced 3 major housing bills: Bill 44, Bill 46, and Bill 47. Most pertinent to this conversation is Bill 44, small-scale multi-unit housing, where cities across the province, and specifically within Metro Vancouver, were required to update their zoning bylaws to allow for 4 to 6 units on former single-family and duplex zone properties. In the last 6 months, we've been evaluating these projects city by city, and Burnaby's had the largest uptake, with staff suggesting that there's been over 200 preliminary applications for 4 to 6 unit developments in the first 6 months of the program. Looking into the future, one other key date to be aware of is the December 31st, 2025 deadline for each city to update their official community plan. The official community plan updates will integrate the TOA areas for 4 to 8 story condo buildings within 800 meters of 104 designated SkyTrain stations, West Coast Express stops, and major bus loops, in addition to also filling out the rest of the lower density multifamily, the 6-story wood frame buildings, and higher density townhome land use designations that in many cases were eliminated when the condos were announced within the TOA areas. You can look to both corridors and shoulder areas to foresee where the new 6-story wood frame buildings are most likely going to be designated. The amenity cost charge is a new cost charge that allows for cities to collect fees to pay for the increased demand on services, that's recreation centers, libraries, parkland acquisition, and other community benefits. In relation to Bill 44, as a recap, applies to every property over 3,014 square feet, allowing for a minimum of 4 units, 3 stories in height. The provincial guidelines provided for 40 to 50% lot coverage recommendation and left flexibility up to the cities on how many parking stalls would be required within the 4-unit designations. To determine whether the property is 6 units, you must look to the distance to a frequent transit network. And a frequent transit network is a bus that runs every 15 minutes and identified by TransLink. If the property is within 400 meters of the frequent transit network, then the minimum units required by the province is 6, again with 3 stories in height, 60% lot coverage recommendation, and no parking minimums allowed to be implemented by the cities. As an example, in Burnaby, there are 30,933 properties that qualified for the new designations. 99.6% of them are at least 4 units. 36% of the properties in Burnaby are within the 400 meters of the FTN and can build 6 units. And 20% of the properties are designated as transit-oriented areas, allowing for 8-story condos up to 20-story condos. If you go into the Burnaby mapping systems, you'll be able to see these green corridors are the areas that allow for 6 units. The purple rings are the transit-oriented areas between 8 stories and 20 stories, and continues throughout majority of the city. Question for the attendees. The frequent transit network that dictates whether you can build 6 units or 4 units, the buses that run every 15 minutes, does not apply to Vancouver. Can anyone suggest why the frequent transit networks would not apply to Vancouver, but do apply to every other city in Metro Vancouver? So the reason that 4 to 6 units is not defined by the frequent transit network in Vancouver is because Vancouver's R1-1 zoning bylaw was implemented before the provincial announcements. Vancouver allowed for multiplexes in September of 2023, and the provincial announcements came in December of 2023, noting that the provincial announcements only applied to former single family and duplex properties. Because Vancouver already allowed for 4 to 6 units on their lots, the provincial mandates do not apply to Vancouver. And if you're looking for how many units can be built in Vancouver, it's governed by lot frontage and having a back lane as defined in the zoning bylaw. This is also the exclusion that West Vancouver used to exclude majority of their properties from the provincial announcements, suggesting that because they allowed for a main house, a basement suite, and a garden cottage, majority of West Vancouver properties are a triplex, not qualifying under the single family or duplex designation and bypassing the provincial mandates. Since the zoning bylaw was updated in Vancouver over the past year, there has been 257 multiplex applications with more in the queue. These are the development applications that have a development permit submitted, mapped throughout the city. The 3 steps to complete a homeowner feasibility study. When reviewing a property, these are the 3 steps we suggest you take. First is looking at the official community plan and reviewing the zoning bylaw. Secondly, looking at the rezoning process, the development permit process, and the building permit process. This is critical as it defines the timeline of the development. And as we'll see at the end of today's presentation, whether your project is a 2-year timeline or a 5-year timeline, significant affects the annual return on investment, especially if you're working with investors. A 5-year timeline is significantly lower returns than 2-year timelines. And finally, looking at the site characteristics and the massing studies, and we'll give you 3 important features to look for when you're designing your new developments on site. First, the official community plan and zoning review. As many of us have navigated on the city mapping systems, this is an example of Burnaby's GIS. You can go to the layers list on the right, select official community plan areas and land use designations, and it will pull up these overlays on what is allowed beyond small scale multi-unit housing. Each color designates a different land use, for example, townhomes, 4 to 6-story condos, or high density development. And this is the first major warning when completing feasibility studies, is that the city GISs only update after an official community plan is fully ratified and approved by the city. In many cases, like in Burnaby currently today, the city official community plan is in progress to be updated and is published in draft form and not updated on the city GISs. In this example, for the properties around Gilpin, if you relied on the city GISs only, you would not have seen that the properties are likely to be designated as higher density townhomes when the new official community plan is adopted. Importantly, there are new designations for 6-story developments as well in the draft Burnaby official community plan, which will significantly alter property values. One of the first steps is to look at the current official community plan and then reach out to the cities to ensure that there's no official community plan update in progress, and if there is, to identify the draft official community plans. Similarly, in Vancouver, recently the city of Vancouver announced that they'll be updating the land use designations around 17 villages throughout the city, looking to increase many of these properties from its multiplex zoning to higher density townhouse and medium density condos. For more information, you can go to the shapeyourcity.ca/villages and incorporating the review of draft official community plans as part of your feasibility studies. When reviewing zoning bylaws, there's 5 main characteristics that we're looking for to value the property. Number 1 is how many units are allowed within the zoning bylaw. And for example, here in Burnaby, you can see the row house designation, the small scale multi-unit housing designation, and the differences between 1 to 3 units for minimum lot size, 4 units for minimum lot size, and 5 to 6 units within the frequent transit network area. Next is to calculate the size of each unit. This is typically done by floor space ratio, and in Burnaby and Maple Ridge, where there is no floor space ratio, it is determined by the lot coverage and setbacks. Third is whether each unit can be sold individually or whether they have to be held as a rental building, as we mentioned earlier in White Rock. Fourth is what are the parking requirements, and fifth, what the minimum lot size is and whether there's an opportunity to subdivide the property, as there is in many situations in Burnaby where the minimum lot size is only 3,000 square feet and many 8,000 to 9,000 square foot lots can be subdivided, doubling the unit count from 4 to 8 or from 6 to 12. In relation to floor space ratio on your cheat sheets, it defines each city's floor space ratios and the importance of floor space ratios to development feasibility. For Burnaby, taking an 8,000 square foot lot example and the 50% lot coverage max over a 4-story, 3 to 4-story building, this example for 12,000 square feet buildable areas on a 3-story building, 6 units, an average of 2,000 square feet unit size, compared to Delta, where the FSR is only 0.3 plus 1,000 square feet. On that same size lot in Delta, you can only build 3,400 square foot of total building area. Dividing that by 6 units, the average unit size in Delta would be less than 600 square feet and would not pass much feasibility, with the revenues of 600 square foot, essentially condos, barely covering the land costs and not covering the building cost, definitely not providing any additional profit to a developer. Floor space ratios are one of the main limitations to look for, and generally we're looking for at least a 0.8 to 1 FSR before a city's bylaw will become feasible. The second section to completing a homeowner feasibility study is reviewing the development timelines. This is the rezoning, development, and building permit process. As a summary to city processes, on the left side of this wheel is the city-led initiatives. This is where the cities update their official community plans and strategic goals. Then once it's published, the right side of the wheel is what's initiated by citizens and developers, traditionally a rezoning application, then a development permit application, then moving on to a building permit application. This is the importance of what the provincial announcements provided. The provincial announcements required pre-zoning, completely skipping this rezoning section of the process and saving years off the development timeline. For our project at Sitka House, an 88-unit condo building in Port Moody, it was 8 years from the time we acquired the land to when we're going to be giving keys over in the summer of this year. And 5 of those 8 years was through the rezoning process. Presented 11 times to council, mayor, community information meetings, design panels, land use panels. This rezoning, removal of this rezoning process is what's significantly increasing the opportunity for small scale multi-unit housing. Every city except for Burnaby still requires a development permit process. Burnaby is the only city that allows you to go directly to building permit with your 4 to 6 unit development, similar to if you were building a single family home, completely bypassing the planning department. There are 4 cities that have minor development permit processes: Vancouver, Pitt Meadows, Surrey in their Houseplex zone, and Delta, with majority of other cities having undefined development permit processes, causing the investment opportunity not to be available until we can fully understand what the timelines will be associated with the approvals. This is Port Moody, Maple Ridge, the District of North Vancouver, and Richmond. These cities do not have their design guidelines available that will dictate the form and character or what the building looks like or how it will be massed on site, and therefore excludes it currently from being a viable city to invest in. In relation to the cities that have the minor DP processes, Vancouver, majority of developers are getting their permits within 12 months of acquisition, and the city of Vancouver is looking to combine their development permit and building permit application for developments of 4 units or less. to bypass this additional step and streamline the faster approval to building permit. Delta does not allow for individual stratification, which is why the asterisk is there. They allow for each unit to be sold separately, but you cannot have 4 equally sized units. 2 of those units must be coach homes. So the question is, and the importance of the development permit process is, what would you discount a $2 million multiplex if you could not provide on-site parking? This is a key consideration because this is what the development permits define. Where can the buildings be massed and how can the buildings be designed on site? And if you cannot design the development to allow for at least 1 parking stall per unit, it will have significant impacts on the revenues for these developments. And as an example here, Vancouver, through its development permit process and zoning bylaw, requires for back lanes in order to build multiplex and does not allow for internal driveways, which is requiring parking pads off the back lane, compared to Burnaby that does not have a development permit process, does not have design guidelines, and allows for internal driveways down the side of the site, providing for attached garages below each unit and a more traditional slab on grade townhouse site planning than the multiplex type site planning, where you have a block of 4 units and 1 or 2 coach homes at the back with parking pads off the lane. The development permit process and the design guidelines will significantly affect the project viability. And until the cities that have not published those processes publish what that looks like, highly recommend not to invest into those cities and wait until there's more clarity. Site characteristics and massing studies. In order to determine whether you have a developable piece of land, there are 4 main steps we'd recommend that you follow. The first is to check the title for a building scheme or a covenant on title. Many of you would have heard on the news the examples in Burnaby where there are long-standing covenants from the early 1950s when the subdivisions were first created, not allowing for multiplex or not allowing for more than 1 building on the single family property. There has been an example. Adil Dinani has worked with a client to get a building scheme removed from title on a property on the government road area, but it is a legal process. And there's a number of factors, including how many other owners are named in that covenant, that will dictate whether you can remove that restriction or not. Secondly, is to ensure that the property was not excluded by the province mandates. For example, if it's 1 acre or larger, it's excluded from multiplex. If it doesn't have city water or septic connections, it's excluded from multiplex. Agricultural land reserve and heritage properties are still restricted or exempt. Restricted zones, this is any property that already allows for 3 units or more, was exempt from the provincial mandates. And whether it's in the TOAs, in majority of cities, if it's within the 800 meters of SkyTrain, you cannot build multiplex, with the 2 soft exclusions of Vancouver and Burnaby, where currently they are allowing for multiplex, but that is subject to change and may not be reliable into the future. Looking into the zoning bylaw next, for example, in Vancouver, you require the back lane, or in Surrey, to do a houseplex, you require the back lane, 18 meters of frontage, and an R3 zone. This is all outlined in the city by city cheat sheet that we shared with you at the beginning of the presentation. And then finally, looking at the environmental hurdles, are there any creeks, streams, open ditches, peat bog, or floodplain, any significant trees, environmentally sensitive areas identified as hazardous lands, or steep slopes? Any of these environmental hurdles, I would highly recommend, if you're on the acquisition side, to pass on the opportunity. Many times you can overcome these obstacles, but when you're only building 4 to 6 units, the time required to invest into getting all of those approvals done, going in front of the environmental review committee, potentially having provincial requirements, you might as well do a 100-unit development, because it's the same amount of time to push through that additional timeline for 4 units as a large project, and it'll take too much time and energy to get that approved compared to 30,000 other opportunities where you can go straight to building permit and turn your investment within 2 to 2.5 years. In relation to significant trees, the major note for significant trees, and this is both for Vancouver and Burnaby, is not only looking for the significant trees on your site, but also the significant trees in the city boulevard. There's been many applications that we've made in both Burnaby and Vancouver where the cities are protecting the city boulevard trees, which includes root protection zones affecting the building envelopes, and also about whether you can cut back some of the tree branches so that it won't conflict with your new building once you go 3 stories high. It's a major feasibility concern if there's a city boulevard tree, especially if it's a protected tree. And one of the main requirements when you're looking at acquisitions or completing a feasibility study for yourself or clients. Once you have a full understanding of the site characteristics, you move on to the massing study, which is providing where each unit will be sited on site. This is an example of a 66 by 132 foot lot in Burnaby with a side drive aisle splitting the site into 2 blocks of 3. These massing studies are important because as you're doing your revenue projections of your pro forma, the revenues are the most uncertain today, especially with a lack of sales to rely on and the new development styles within multiplex. It's critical to understand how many parking stalls you'll be able to provide each unit, whether it's a garage, carport, or open parking pad. Secondly, what the unit floor plates are. Are you going to be selling units with a 500 square foot floor plate where your second level has 2 bedrooms and your third level is the master bedroom? Or can you sell 750 square foot two-story units where you have all 3 bedrooms on one floor, and on the ground floor you have enough space for a kitchen, dining room table, and nice living area? And thirdly, the projected revenues are most impacted by the size and the exposure of the backyards. How big is each unit's backyard? Will it have sun? And how desirable will it be to end users? With approximately 300 multiplex applications, somewhere between 1,200 and 1,600 units coming to market in Vancouver, it's going to be a beauty contest. The best developments will win. And looking at these 3 factors is what's going to help you separate from the competition where we may have oversupply because so many of these applications are coming at the same time. Buyers will have options and they'll be looking for the best floor plans and the best locations with the best layouts as they make their investments. As an example, for a 6-unit development in Burnaby, if you take the total project and look at what the equity requirement, it is $2.3 million to build a 6-unit multiplex. This is approximately 30% of the project costs. The bank will finance the additional $6 million. It's projected to provide a 15% return on cost, which provides a 55% return on equity over a 2.5-year timeline. That's a 22% annual return to investors, with the project timelines including a 3-month design process, 12-month building permit approval process, 18 months for construction, and 3 months for contingencies. Laidler Capital is launching in January to close contacts and VIPs. If you'd like to invest passively with us, we're working with a number of local builders who are doing multiplex projects, Vancouver, Burnaby, and across the Fraser Valley. These are some of the highest quality of the small builders, including Avera Developments, who was on the developer roundtable for Vancouver when they crafted their multiplex zone. CoStar Construction, who was the winner of 2024 Best Multiplex Georgie Award. Silverleaf Homes, 15-year single-family home builder and one of the largest floral producers in Western Canada. And master builder Sanj Agrawal with Icon Projects are all the types of developers who are applying for funding within Laidler Capital. We're working with investors to diversify your investments across a number of projects to provide you the greatest opportunity to securing returns. Avera Developments has completed a number of these front-back duplexes with laneway and are currently acquiring a new site that would provide 6 units that is likely going to be included in Laidler Capital Fund 1. Also included in Laidler Capital Fund 1 will be a 4 detached home unit development at 7609 Caldecott. These are designed for both downsizers as 2-story homes in the back with 3-story homes in the front for families, attached garages, 1,200 square foot floor plates, private backyards. 7609 Caldecott backs onto the lacrosse box and Armstrong Park on a quiet cul-de-sac where each unit will have its own garage, turnaround, private backyards, and separated living spaces. As an example of the interiors, you'll have kitchens, living rooms, and full-size dining rooms with a special focus to design these for downsizers, helping more grandkids live closer to their grandparents. The family that shared their 4-unit development in Delta, where you have the kids and the grandkids on one side and the grandparents on the other. This really hits home to us and my growing family, and is one of the keys for Laidler Capital to provide more opportunities. These units will be specifically designed for downsizers. For example, we'll have creative options where you can have a spice kitchen or you can convert it into a kid's playroom. As examples here, we have a Cars themed or an Elsa themed playroom right off the kitchen. So when the grandkids come over, there's a dedicated play space, creating more connection between families. We're pleased to have Cynthia Aasen, a 30-year veteran within the private equity space for real estate development, a longtime realtor, and a past client 10 years ago, had the good fortune to work with Cynthia on the sale of her home, join us today. Cynthia will be representing Laidler Capital Fund 1, and we'll walk you through a few of the key features. Hi, Cynthia, welcome.
Thank you. So exciting. So exciting to be here. Yeah, welcome everyone. I've known Bill since 2016. In fact, Bill assembled my land in Coquitlam, so long history with the team and just extremely excited to be here. Just so everyone understands my role with Laidler Group, I'm a DR, a dealing representative with Integrated Equities, which is an exempt market dealer that really allows high net worth individuals access to exclusive high performing opportunities like this through a subscription process. And I will be working with anyone that's interested, explaining the investment and facilitating the paperwork. So my excitement about this investment opportunity is I've spent the past 20 years helping investors build wealth through real estate. Laidler Capital Fund will fund housing for that missing middle. It will allow young families to live in the neighborhoods they grew up in, empty nesters to remain in the neighborhoods close to their friends. And it's really all about delivering affordable housing options in the single family neighborhoods. Laidler's involvement will provide oversight and guidance, and they will manage every step of the development process, from zoning to the construction oversight, while they're partnering with top builders. And it's Bill's experience in this arena that really is going to provide investors, that combination of industry expertise and exclusive access to projects to give you confidence and offer what I think are extremely attractive returns. And, we've looked at some projects. For the first fund, there will be 3 projects, roughly. We're looking at about a 20% annualized return with just a 2-year investment time horizon, which is extremely short, mitigating a lot of risk to political risk, interest rates. This risk is also spread along multiple zoning approved projects. Laidler, working with the trusted builders, will oversee everything from pre-sales to the construction oversight. So it's an exclusive opportunity. Subscription is going to be based on first come, first serve, 20% plus annualized returns with a 2-year investment horizon. I think this is going to provide investors strong returns in a very quick time frame and for much needed affordable housing. The first fund we will be launching shortly. This is the VIP presentation. We're raising 5.7 million approximately. So it'll be available to 57 high net worth investors, a minimum investment of 100,000. And currently we'll be accepting expressions of interest, which will require 10% deposit. Full funding won't be due until the end of March. So for anyone that's interested, please scan the QR code. This will book an appointment, and I'm happy to explain all the details to you. I think now we're going to open it up for Q&A.
Thank you, Cynthia. And Cynthia, before you break, how does this type of development compare to the traditional projects that you've been working with over the last number of years?
Well, it's the time frame. And also, when we're looking at the purpose-built rental, which we've raised quite a bit of capital for, these are the 6-story wood frame, your approval timelines are anywhere from 4 to 5 years. So as an investor, you're getting involved in these, and, there's a lot of uncertainty. You've got a lot of exposure to that longer time horizon with interest rates going up, costs going up, from what we've discussed, Bill, the fixed price contracts, all of the risk mitigating factors that you're putting in place will mitigate a lot of the normal uncertainty and normal risks that are associated with real estate development.
Thank you. For anyone who wants to explore this as an investment, please reach out to Cynthia. You can meet with her and she'll walk you through all of the details. One of the main reasons, as Cynthia outlined, that I'm moving from 6-story condo developments into small scale multi-unit housing is because of that political risk. We have approved projects with pre-zoning, bypassing mayor and council discretion, moving right to building permit, where we can foresee what our hard costs will be. We have a decent idea of what the interest rate environment is, and it's really nailing the revenue side of what these units will sell for as the main risk that needs to be mitigated. But thank you, Cynthia. We'll take some of these Q&As here now. Let's start from the top. I know Coquitlam hasn't been mentioned. Have they had their triplex, fourplex program for a while? However, I know they're looking to making changes, and if there is any risk there. From the best that I understand, the fourplex program in mostly Millardville, this is the Housing Choices RT1, RT3, will remain. Coquitlam has not been updated in the presentation or in the city by city review because they were granted a 1-year extension, where City of Coquitlam zoning bylaw will be updated by June 30th, 2025 this year. From initial council presentations, it looks like it's going to be a limited adoption with lower floor space ratios and also higher parking requirements that then may make this feasible. I'm also concerned about how extensive that development permit process will be in Coquitlam. In that Millardville RT1, RT3 zone, development permits alone could take up to 2 years. And if that transfers into this expanded zone, it will significantly reduce the viability of investing into Coquitlam. Does the annualized return pay out annually, or is it accumulated? Good question, Linda. It is accumulated. The payouts will be distributed on project completion, which is expected to be 2 years from the investment date. Please enter your questions as Zoom's Q&A features. Jackie, if I'm missing questions in the Q&A, can you please direct me to the additional space Q&A? It's over here. Got it. Has Coquitlam announced its ACCs? No, Coquitlam has not announced the ACCs, DCCs. Abbotsford or Chilliwack is outside of Metro Vancouver, and we haven't included it in the cheat sheet. Although it is rumored that Abbotsford is updating their 4 to 6 unit zone, and we can be expecting new policies to be coming out by the end of March that will make Abbotsford a more viable investment opportunity. Zachary McRae, building permits process 12 months is quite still extensive for Burnaby. Appreciates faster than BP. Yeah, building permits. We haven't seen the total timeline, but because it's a new process, we have seen a slower processing of Burnaby's pre-engineering process, and we're still budgeting 12 months, being hopeful that it will come down somewhere closer to that 6-month range. Blanca Properties asked, this is for you, Cynthia. Are we investing in cash only or registered funds as well?
No, there will not be availability at this time for registered funds. It will be cash only, accredited investors. Once I believe that will be in the future. For the first couple of funds, we're going to do a limited partnership structure, which, you know, to get to registered, you need to create an offering memorandum, which is quite a significant requirement in terms of audits and in terms of costs, and it just wouldn't make sense on small funds. Makes sense on larger open-end funds. So yeah, for now it's cash only, accredited.
Great. Max, how far after completion do investors get paid out? You'll be paid your equity out fairly quickly. As soon as the proceeds come in from the closing dates, it'll be distributed, with the one caveat that there is a 10% builder's lien holdback, and part of the profits will be held back until after the 6-month required timeline. Do you have investors interested to buy land in Burnaby off market? Yes, we do. CamBiz, please send us any opportunities for properties in Burnaby and Vancouver most specifically, but any city we either maybe purchase ourselves or can direct you to a realtor or a developer who is active in this space. Braden Douglas, nice to see you. I heard Burnaby has updated their TOA policies. We are still waiting for the official community plan to be updated and released. What you may be referring to, Graydon, is that Burnaby has now reduced their affordable housing requirement and is allowing for more strata in their medium density, which is significantly increasing the land values and the viability of building condos in Burnaby. Eric asks, we use a GPLP structure? Yes, it's a GPLP structure. Will the payouts be happening after all 4 to 6 units are sold? Eugene asks, so as proceeds come in, as units are sold, it first pays down the debt, the construction loan, then it will pay back the project equity. And then after project equity is paid out, then the profit splits will kick in between the investors and the general partners. But it will be paid as each new unit closes. So you will likely have a number of distributions. We won't hold the funds until the end. As we collect the payouts from the end units closing, we'll distribute that as soon as possible.
And you might want to note that the forecasts that have been provided, or the pro formas, are assuming all the money's held till the end. So if you're paying out the equity sooner, that actually increases the annualized return.
How do architects figure in? Maybe you can expand on that question. Architects are required for any development that has 5 attached units or more. We do have one project that we're seeking an architect now on Dufferin Street in Burnaby. Would a 2-acre parcel in Burke Mountain on septic allow 4 dwelling units? Darren asked. No, Darren, that would need to be subdivided down to below 1-acre lots and would need to be upgraded with both city sewer and water. I'm going to move over to the Q&A section here, getting through the chats. We have until 11 o'clock, so feel free to ask as many questions as you like, and we will answer them for you over the next 20 minutes or so. Linda asked the annualized return. We've answered this question. Do you think Coquitlam will allow coach homes everywhere? It seems like coach homes are going to be allowed through Coquitlam. That is part of what they're allowing. The maximum units are 4 units per lot because there's no frequent transit network. The reason why I'm slower to respond here is it's really uncertain what the design guidelines are going to be in Coquitlam and how extensive that development permit process will be and how much control the city will place on the design of those coach homes. Is Burnaby the best municipality to date to build multiplex? Yes, based on the flexibility within their zoning bylaw. Not only does Burnaby not have a development permit process, it also does not include a floor space ratio maximum and allows for internal driveways, which provides opportunities for attached garages rather than open parking pads at the back of the property like Vancouver allows for. Maple Ridge is also similar, where Maple Ridge does not have a floor space ratio, but it's still unclear what design guidelines are going to be required in Maple Ridge. So the jury is still out for Maple Ridge. Township of Langley, Dennis, approved small scale multi-unit housing November 18th. Yes, thank you. We will update the cheat sheet. The cheat sheet was last updated at the end of September, and we'll be looking to do a wholesome review of that document by the end of Q1. Also, is 18 months build time normal? It's super long. Yes, it is longer than what it likely will be. Generally 10 to 12 months is likely construction time. We're budgeting 18 months for construction to ensure there is lots of contingency to have this delivered without overpromising. How much is the GP Laidler's carry interest, and will Laidler invest himself? Yes, we have 10% of the total equity requirement in for the projects that we manage. Similar to all other builders, we'll have at least 10% of the total equity invested into the projects. And Laidler's carried interest is a 50-50 split after the investors are paid out a preferred 16% return, which is one of the highest preferred returns that we've seen in the marketplace, and is really a testament to how selective we're being with the projects. We will not be paid our carried interest until you, the investor, has a 16% annualized return. Thank you for the question. I could not log in initially for some reason. How important is the back lane in Pitt Meadows and the Fraser Valley? It's extremely important in Surrey. In Surrey, you are only able to sell 2 units with basement suites and coach homes to get to the 4 to 6 units. Unless you have a back lane, the R3 zoning and 18 meters of frontage, then you qualify for a houseplex, which would allow you to sell 4 separate titles. It's the difference between having to sell a duplex well over $2 million compared to a townhouse well below $1.5 million, which is where we see the protection in the marketplace. The higher the prices get, the more risky multiplex is. And those are the duplexes with basement suites and coach homes compared to a slab on grade townhome well below 1.5 or $2 million in Vancouver, and being a new product type that has never been available in the marketplace. Do you think coach homes, we've answered this question, any feedback on frontage fees, say 60 feet of frontage in Burnaby where there's no existing sidewalks or curbs? There seems to be mandated 3 for 3+ developments. Hi, Dino. Yes, we're carrying $150,000 for frontage improvements in our budgets in Burnaby. In Burnaby, the city will require you to upgrade curbs and gutters, add separated sidewalks, street lights, and street trees. And potentially the biggest risk is the BC Hydro upgrades, whether you have to, how far you have to underground the BC Hydro service and placing the PMT on site. So we're carrying $150,000 up to $200,000 if the BC Hydro requirements look like they're going to be extensive. What is the minimum lot size for the side-by-side 4 duplex in Burnaby, and if available, North Vancouver? Minimum frontage for 4 side-by-side duplex Well, if you take a 50-foot lot and you have a 4-foot side yard setback on each side, then you have 42 feet of frontage left. Dividing that by 2, you would have 20-foot wide units on side-by-side duplexes with a 50-foot lot. That's typically where we see the nicest floor plans. Once you start getting below 50 feet, your side-by-side duplexes become very skinny and the saleability of those floor plans start to deteriorate. Any information on North Vancouver? We haven't, because the density, the floor space ratio in North Vancouver is so limited and there's such uncertainty on whether the development permit process will be streamlined. We have not done much site planning in North Vancouver, nor plan to in the immediate future unless there's a major change in their political environment. Any update on the DCC and other city fees for Burnaby? I heard rumors that's getting to be around $110,000 per door. Hi, Perry. Feedback from city when we asked this question within the last month was there is no major changes for the Burnaby fees beyond what was announced in June of last year. Currently, the fees are around $80,000 per door when you include the Metro Vancouver fees. And they are going up yearly for inflation, but I have heard other rumors that they're significantly increasing based on our correspondence with city staff. They did not confirm that they confirmed that they are not working on any other substantial increases beyond adjusting for inflation. Does Laidler have an inventory and can act as the introducing realtor for opportunities in Burnaby and North Vancouver? I am not a realtor anymore. I released my license in 2020 and refer many clients to our Laidler Academy preferred realtors. We have a number of very good options that have gone through our training programs and work closely with us that have opportunities that you could both purchase, are very good on the sales side as well, and can act as your realtor. Someone from the Laidler team, if you can take a note for Sohail, and we'll introduce them to a few preferred realtors. Kush is asking, what is the typical profit made by the people who bought lots in the NAR areas in Millardville? 8,000 square feet, 1,500 square foot for 4 units. Generally, the profit margins for the Millardville R1 area, we're projecting anywhere from 700,000 to 1.2 million, depending on the location. Although that market is softened up now because there's so much additional supply. The land in the Millardville has not been trading at the same values they were last year. Mostly, I expect because the builders have moved to Burnaby as their main priority. Wayne Ing asks, I have a corner lot 56 by 124 in Burnaby. Should you subdivide it and build 4 units on each? And would this be feasible? Wayne, most likely that is a good option. Although on a 56-foot of frontage, you would need to work on what your unit widths are. If your unit widths are less than 15 feet, it becomes a very small, skinny townhome, which may mean that you would want to do 3 units on each. Then the question on whether you subdivide or not is whether you're already entitled to 6 units because you're within the FTN area, or if you can only do 4 units because you're outside an FTN area, maybe it does make sense to subdivide to get those extra 2 units. If you have any more specific questions on that, feel free to reach out to us and we'll get you in touch with either a development manager or ourselves if you're interested in joint venturing. Don Fuller, what is the security? What security does the fund take on the land? The investors are LP investors. You have shares in the limited partnership that owns the land and controls the land, and that is your security. Do you have anything else that you want to add for that one, Cynthia?
Typically, GPLP structure is that, you don't have direct security, but you do have an interest in the limited partnership, which will be secured by the underlying assets. So it's indirect, but there is security.
Yes, and part of the fund, the LP investors will have an advisory board, and the advisory board will have control over major decisions in the development. If the builder moves outside of their proposed business model, for example, a major site plan change or requiring additional funds, all of that would require a unanimous vote from the advisory board, which the LP investors will be protected through our oversight and 1 additional board member. Eric asked, do you have an in-house GC or do you outsource? 10 to 12 month construction time seems too quick. Is that construction from the time of abatement to occupancy permit? Yes, if we're talking about 10 to 12 month construction time, that would typically be from the time that the house is demolished and we're starting services and moving into construction. We do have a GC. One of our preferred GCs is Sanj Agrawal with Icon Projects. We work with a number of different GCs locally. Vic is asking how many units before REDMA forces the seller to provide a disclosure statement for pre-sales. The minimum requirement before pre-sales is 4 units or less. Once you move to a 5-unit development, you'll have to file a disclosure statement through REDMA. Although I will suggest that REDMA does have additional requirements like finishing your pre-sales within 9 months. But in terms of the substance of what REDMA requires in the disclosure statement, even if you bypass that requirement in a 4-unit development, it would benefit your certainty to complete a disclosure statement quality book to be given to each purchaser to reduce the uncertainty of what they're purchasing in. This is things like having the strata plan formed, rules and bylaws ready to go, a management company in place. All of those items that are required in the disclosure statement are important information for a buyer to have as they're purchasing the contract, and will reduce your risk that a buyer tries to back out of their contract on completion, arguing that they were not fully aware of the strata entitlement and creating a legal battle to try and force the closing. As much information and as clear as it can be before the buyers enter into their pre-sale contracts will give you the highest amount of certainty that those pre-sales will close. If TS, in terms of your academy, which is the best course to take to assess feasibility and run the numbers to do a pro forma? The best course is the multiplex intensive. It's 4 days in person. It runs every month, every Tuesday, and starts every month. The entire process will cover massing studies, the feasibility checklist, and the pro formas, including how to remove conditions, set up your own general partner, limited partner structures, and how you can work with investors or help your clients work with investors. Kush is asking a question about R3 lot with a back lane for $1.4 million. The main question here is, Kush, is can you build at $180 per square foot in Surrey? There are buyers that have bought on that business model and fairly close to it. Your 500K selling costs are likely light, but feel free to send me more specific details about the property and I can give you a fuller answer. Philip Evans, would Burnaby entertain additional density above 6 stories if historic buildings are being kept, a 3-story walk-up, and adding 4 stories in order to make the numbers work and incentivizing development? Depends on the area, Philip. Many cities are highly focused on restoring historic buildings and will work with developers to achieve those goals. For your specific situation, I am not sure, but it's definitely worth the conversation and worth exploring. Don Gray, if you're within limits for 6-plex zoning in Pitt Meadows, would it not be feasible without a back lane similar to Surrey? Very few lanes in the area. Hi, Don. The biggest challenge for Pitt Meadows is Pitt Meadows requires 1.5 parking stalls per unit for the 4 units, which it eliminates much of the feasibility for 4 units. 6 units within Pitt Meadows, you don't have to have the parking requirements. Off memory, you don't have to have a back lane in Pitt Meadows. You can build the 6-plexes without a back lane. Check the cheat sheet to confirm, but off memory, I'm fairly confident that is the requirement. One of the challenges in Pitt Meadows is the revenue numbers are not high enough to cover the land cost, the hard costs, and all the soft costs, or if they are high enough to cover them, it's not by the same margins that we're seeing in Burnaby. Time for 2 more questions. Nick is asking, Vancouver 9,000 square foot lot, cornered by 2 lanes within 800 meters. What is the best and highest development use? Well, the highest and best development use would be the condo development. The challenge with condos within TOAs is now you have to assemble with your neighbors, look at what the age of the houses that are in the assembly. And in Vancouver, the affordable housing requirement is fairly high for medium density projects. It still does provide a land lift above and beyond the multiplex zone, but what we've seen is it's not enough to get enough neighbors and excited about selling at the same time, which kills the development potential and pushes you back into the multiplex, which is still a viable pathway forward, not as much profit. But if you're the developer, a much shorter timeline, which is why we're moving into the multiplex and bypassing bigger profits in the higher density groups, because the turnaround times are much more efficient and cause a higher return on equity than the longer, bigger projects. Last question from Zachary McRae. 4-story single stairwell walk-up has been built into the new BC. Do you see any opportunity in this model in the future? Possibility, probably as rental. Zachary, we have had a number of clients and even ourselves that have looked into building 4-story condo buildings in Burnaby in the multiplex zone under this single stairwell walk-up development model. Burnaby currently is not fully supportive of the single stairwell. And I think there's going to be a long learning curve before you can get through your building permits, and that each city is going to work out exactly what the BC building code is identifying for those requirements. It is technically allowed because it's in the BCBC, at how the cities will implement that and how much additional consultant work will be required before they're going to approve your building permit is another question. If I put majority of those plans on hold, we'll wait for some other developers to go through the process to work out all the details, and then we'll evaluate it once we've seen approved projects come through. Any hidden added costs for accessible disability new building rules? The accessibility does not apply to multiplex. It does apply to condos. So there's no hidden costs, at least in Burnaby, for accessibility. Pitt Meadows does require your 6th unit to be accessible. So there's limited hidden costs there, Dino. Although we are focused on providing downsizer housing, and there is a big benefit on the revenue side to design homes for downsizers that plan their aging in place. And I think that there is an opportunity to have some creative ideas to have some well-designed units for downsizers that plan for accessibility and disability in the future. That is the end of today's presentation. Thank you for being here. Any final words for all of our attendees?
Well, as you can see by all the questions that Bill ripped through on this presentation, you've got a lot of knowledge, and I think it's exciting to be working with someone that's taking the time to really dive deep into the intricacies, all the rules, all the plans. And, I think that gives me a lot of confidence in terms of delivering amazing returns. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We look forward to seeing you. And for anyone who's going to invest with us, welcome to the team. Let's go help more grandparents live closer to their grandkids. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Bye.